Welcome to Middle-earth, at least Middle-earth as depicted in The Lord of the Rings Online. Our guide for today is Leonard the Loremaster from the Arkenstone server, and for this second episode of the Traveler series, we will follow the Fellowship from their escape from Bree to Weathertop, or Amon Sul, over in the Weather Hills. We're departing from the Inn of the Prancing Pony, and, prior to the departure, Strider and the hobbits recognized that, hey, all the ponies and horses are gone. They've been set free or stolen. And so this delayed their departure. And by the time that Strider was ready to head out the next day, the whole town of Bree here was just really kind of a buzz, right? You've got, stories of this, Frodo's vanishing trick, the appearance of the Black Riders the night before, the robbing of the stables, and then this ranger joining with these hobbits. And so, leaving town, everyone was abuzz, and even here in the game, you'll see that they've, folks sticking their heads out the windows to try to understand what's going on. And so Strider had to change his strategy now. I'm actually going out of the Stadel Gate instead of the Southern Gate, which is more of kind of the main entrance to the East-West Road access. But again, Strider, knew that he needed to not act too suspicious, so he kind of stayed on the road for a few miles. And then once all the, the looky-loos started to fade, is when he set out to go cross-country. And that led them to go along the northern edge of the Midgewater Marsh and enter the Chetwood Forest. And so this would have been a small forest, but fairly thick. It would have bordering to the left here would have been the towns of Combe and Archet. So, again, it's Strider trying to be as clandestine as he can of what their plans were. Now, it's estimated that Weathertop was, 100 miles or so by road from Bree. And so Strider's plan was to try to make as much of a beeline as he could. And spending a couple of days traversing through the woods of Chetwood, as you'll see, getting your first glimpses coming up here of the Midgewater Marsh, you would have wanted this landscape much more so than entering the marsh. So, on the third day, the Fellowship would have been coming out of the Chetwood Forest and entering into the marshes. And, this was a risky move, right? Because the hobbits would have had a very difficult time, as depicted in the movies as well, just navigating this, bog. And it wasn't just the bog, right? It was filled with all types of insects and creatures. So as you can see here now, coming into the marsh itself, it's a pretty vast expanse of wetlands. And of course, in the Peter Jackson movies, we get some of the iconic lines from the books from Sam and from Pippin, right? Pippin saying, "Midgewater, there's more midges than water," right? And of course, Sam's favorite line from the movie, or famous line from the movie, was, "What do they live on when they can't get hobbit?" You can see there, maybe kind of in the distance, the first glimpses of Weathertop, and there's some significance to that as well. But, this would have been a very, miserable and unpleasant time. And there you can see Weathertop ruins there up to the east. And the reason that's, fairly significant is, as I mentioned, it took the hobbits and Strider, a few days. They were actually 3 days out now when they ended up in the Midgewater Marsh. And on October 3rd, as they were here in the Midgewater Marshes, October 3rd of the Third Age 3018, Gandalf was trying to obviously make his way to meet Frodo at the Prancing Pony, and Gandalf was set up on by the 9 ring wraiths. And so while Frodo had a very restless night, he saw some flashes off in the distance to the east, didn't know what they were, and asked Strider, and Strider wasn't sure exactly what they were either. And that would have been Gandalf battling the ring wraiths. So you see now entering into the Weather Hills, the landscape changes pretty dramatically. Again, not that this would have been easier for the hobbits to traverse, but at least their feet were dry. And I think when we get up here, you can start to see some pretty good views from Weathertop itself. You know, the strategic importance of Weathertop, and it was really recognized during the reign of Elendil. And it was built as a watchtower. This area was kind of on the border of 3 different kingdoms, and it also had a palantir on top. So, you know, from a strategic advantage, this is where a lot of intelligence would have been gathered. This is where communication to the king of Annúminas, later on in Fornos, could have been made. And it would have taken them about an additional 2 days to get here to the hill. And once we get up here to the hill, I'm not sure if in the game they meant this campsite to be the specific location or not. But you know, in the movies, you see the scene where Frodo's awake, restless, and he hears Strider singing the Lay of Luthien. And so I think that campsite, or a campsite close to the bottom of the hill here, is just over this ridge. You know, it's also here at Weathertop, and yes, here's the campsite there. And it kind of makes sense based on the number of logs around that campfire. But you know, it's also here at the summit that you know, Gil-galad and Elendil's armies would have met when the last alliance of the elves and men was formed. And we're just going to take a little bit of a shortcut to get up here. There's a couple of different ways to actually reach the summit. I'm taking the less traveled way, just up some players. Someone else sightseeing on Weathertop. And here we go. If I can get up, there we go. So as Mary said, well, here we are. And very cheerless and inviting looks were drawn upon him, because there's no water, there's no shelter, and no sign of Gandalf. But you see the scorched earth there in the center, and those rock canes that actually Aragorn found a message from Gandalf on. And this is looking back towards the east, back towards the Trollshaws and the last bridge. And on this side of the summit, we'd be looking south with the great east-west road below. Can't quite make out the road, but pretty vast expanse. And then on this side, we'll take a look back towards the Midgewater Marshes and Breeland to the west. So it took us about 8 minutes or so to traverse that. Again, tried to follow the path that was most likely the path that the Fellowship followed. So, you know, thank you for riding along. Make sure to subscribe and share with any of your Tolkien friends or your Lord of the Rings Online friends. And, you know, we're leading up to the 15th anniversary of the game. So until next time, remember that the Day of the Dwarves is coming.